Imagine standing in the middle of a Saudi desert. Out of that emptiness, two massive mirrored skyscrapers rise side by side. This is the Line, the centerpiece of NEOM, one of the boldest urban projects ever announced. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman himself announced NEOM in 2017. This plan is part of Vision 2030, a goal to reduce the country's dependence on oil and build a new future. The project has a staggering price tag of $500 billion, primarily funded by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. NEOM covers 26,500 square kilometers in the northwest of Saudi Arabia near the Red Sea. That's about the size of Albania. Inside this mega project are several parts. The Line, a futuristic city. Oxagon, a floating industrial hub. Trohena, a luxury ski resort in the desert, and one of the largest green energy plants in the world. But the centerpiece is the Line. Announced in 2021, it's planned as a straight city, 170 kilometers long, 500 meters tall, and just 200 meters wide. The Line is supposed to hold 9 million people. Everything – homes, offices, shops, schools, even waterfalls – will be built vertically. With high-speed trains, people could travel the whole city in just 20 minutes. Every service would be within a 5-minute walk, and cars or streets would not exist. The developers promise 100% renewable energy, flying taxis, robots, and smart systems powered by artificial intelligence. But does the reality match that as well? Unfortunately, no. Let's look at a few reasons. First up, from an engineering perspective, it faces huge problems. No city has ever been built in such a narrow strip before. Normally, cities grow outward and adjust over time, but the Line locks all people into one single path. That means everything – transportation, housing, power, food – depends on one system. If a train, power grid or water line breaks, the whole city could be stuck. Next, mirrored walls. In the desert, the heat goes up to 50 degrees Celsius. Sandstorms hit often and dust is non-stop. Keeping 170 kilometers of glass shiny will need endless cleaning, massive water use, and huge costs. Another issue is daily life. If your job or school is dozens of kilometers away along the same line, the trip could be long, even with high-speed trains. Even the city's shape makes things harder. In London, for example, two random people are on average about 20 miles apart. In the Line, the average distance could stretch to 35 miles, despite the city's narrow design. That could create social isolation and practical difficulties, even with high-speed trains. Undoubtedly, the vision is bold, but experts agree that the technical execution is potentially unworkable. Plus, the financial reality behind NEOM makes it even riskier. When Saudi Arabia first announced NEOM, the government set aside around $500 billion for it, and the Line, the project's most famous part, was supposed to cost about $100 to $200 billion. But by 2024, reports showed the real price tag could reach $1.5 to $2 trillion. To give you an idea, that's almost twice Saudi Arabia's entire economy in 2023. This financial shock has already changed everything. The original dream was a 170-kilometer city by 2045, with at least 1.5 million living there by 2030. But now those numbers are shrinking fast. New targets suggest that by 2030, only about 2.4 kilometers might be built, with fewer than 300,000 people living there. Funding is another big challenge. Oil money pays for most of this, but oil prices rise and fall unpredictably. In 2020, a crash in demand forced the kingdom to pause or cancel other big projects. Experts warn the same thing could happen with NEOM if prices drop again. Foreign investment was supposed to help fill the gap. But many companies are staying away, worried about putting money into an untested city in a risky region. That means the burden falls mainly on Saudi taxpayers and the country's investment fund, which is already funding other billion-dollar projects. On top of that, the technology NEOM relies on, like artificial intelligence, self-driving systems, and massive renewable projects, is still expensive and unproven. If these don't work as planned, costs could spiral even higher. So, NEOM's future depends on oil markets, outside investors, and technology that may or may not live up to the hype. And it's not just the money. Building mirrored skyscrapers in the desert is far harder than expected. This mega project is rising in Saudi Arabia's Tabuk province, land that has been home to the Hawaitat tribe for centuries. Since 2020, thousands of people from this tribe have been forced out of their homes to make space for NEOM. Reports say around 20,000 residents are being displaced. The government calls it relocation with compensation, but many families say they never got fair pay or proper homes. Instead, the process often comes with threats, arrests, and even violence. One of the most shocking cases was in April 2020, when tribal activist Abdul Rahim al-Huwaiti refused to leave. He spoke out against the evictions and was shot and killed during a raid. His death sent fear through the community, but the pushback didn't stop. Human rights groups confirm that at least 47 tribe members have been arrested for resisting. Some received prison terms as long as 15 to 50 years. 3 men were sentenced to death. These punishments often came under Saudi Arabia's counter-terrorism law. By June 2025, the last house in the village of Al-Quraiba was destroyed. Security forces came with guns, and the final families were removed. That marked the end of any tribal presence in the area. While Saudi leaders sell NEOM as the city of the future, the human cost is devastating. But this is only one side of the story. Another growing concern is how it is permanently damaging the whole environment. Imagine standing in the desert right next to the Red Sea. At first it looks empty, but under the water lies one of the most fragile places on Earth. Coral reefs, mangrove forests, dolphins, turtles, and rare fish that live nowhere else. This is where Saudi Arabia is building its billion-dollar mega-project. NEOM says it will be the world's model of sustainability, but when you look closely, the story changes. The project is being built on the Gulf of Aqaba, home to the northernmost coral reef systems on the planet. These reefs are strong enough to survive rising sea temperatures, yet scientists warn that dredging for ports and resorts could destroy them forever. Studies show that even small dredging projects can cover corals in sand, stop them from growing, and harm fish populations. Then comes the problem of water. Saudi Arabia gets less than 100 millimeters of rain each year. That's almost nothing. To give water to millions of people, NEOM will depend on desalination. That's turning seawater into drinking water. The technology is smart, and NEOM says it will recover up to 90% of seawater and reuse brine for minerals instead of dumping it back. But desalination takes huge amounts of energy. Today, it already uses about 10% of the country's electricity. NEOM will push that number even higher, even if powered by renewables. Now, if we talk about building materials, the line needs over 2 million tons of concrete and 1.5 million tons of steel. That equals more than 10 million tons of CO2 emissions. Cement alone makes up 7% of the world's carbon pollution. The project, however, promises to protect 95% of its land and sea, restore 1.5 million hectares of damaged land, and plant 100 million trees. That sounds hopeful, but even restoring nature takes water, and water is already the project's biggest challenge. NEOM truly feels like another case of greenwashing rather than a green city of the future. And considering it, if the environment can't withstand the project, financial costs soar while engineering challenges pile up. The question is, what is the government actually doing about it? And can they do enough? Since its big launch in 2017, NEOM has faced major leadership problems. In early 2024, its longtime CEO Nadmi Al-Nasser stepped down after heavy criticism for overpromising progress. Reports linked his exit to delays, cost overruns, and even workplace culture issues. Soon after, Ayman Al-Madaifa stepped in as acting CEO to reset the strategy with tighter budgets and governance. But frequent leadership changes make it hard for a project of this size to stay on track. Timelines are another big issue. When the line was first revealed, Saudi Arabia promised 1.5 million residents by 2030. But by 2024, Bloomberg and other outlets reported that the target had been cut down to 300,000 at best. On the ground, progress looks slow. Drone footage shows excavation in only a small section of the planned 170 kilometers. At this pace, it could take decades to finish. Even the parts that are moving forward are late and over budget. For example, the Sindala resort was supposed to open years earlier, but finally launched in 2024, 3 years late and costing 3 times the original budget. Reports also revealed that some contracts were quietly reduced in size, while other projects were halted altogether. An internal audit reported by the Wall Street Journal even suggested that consultants used overly optimistic models to cover up problems. With such leadership mess, shrinking targets, delayed delivery, and funding doubts, NEOM feels no less than a gamble. However, even if NEOM somehow fixes its leadership and delivery delays, another big problem arises. Who will actually come here as tourists? Tourism is one of the biggest selling points of NEOM. Saudi Arabia wants millions of people from around the world to visit this futuristic desert city. But there's no guarantee people will actually come. Right now, the biggest risk is its location. NEOM is being built in the middle of a desert near the Red Sea. There's no existing urban culture, nightlife, or historic attractions that usually draw tourists. Building artificial ski resorts, skyscrapers, and artificial moons might sound fascinating at first, but they don't guarantee long-term interest. Another major factor is climate. The region regularly reaches 40 degrees Celsius, that's 104 degrees Fahrenheit, or more in the summer. Finally, cost is an issue. NEOM could become one of the most expensive tourist destinations in the world. If prices are sky high, only the ultra-rich may visit, making it hard to hit mass tourism goals. NEOM was sold as the city of the future, but the cracks in its foundation are already showing. Mega projects like this show us that flashy things don't always match reality. What do you think? Is NEOM the future or just a fantasy? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive investigations like this.